Hey everybody, welcome back to Conversations in Pop Culture, and we are back in the saddle once again for another season. And I just want to remind everybody, I am still working on wiggling my big thumb toe. And once I get that done, I'm going to work on the rest of those little piggies because I absolutely want to feel like Uma Thurman in Kill Bill right after she gets out of the hospital because I just had a surgery. So I'm working on it, guys, and I will keep everybody up to date on that problem. But enough about my issue and everything that's going on, because I have with me comic creator Shaun Barbour. So welcome to the show, and hopefully I got your name right.
Yeah, no, close enough, man. Shaun Barbour, Barbour, Barbarian, whatever people want to say, as long as they associate the work with the face, we're good.
Well, I'm glad you decided to come on. I'm glad you're here, and obviously, there's a lot of stuff going on with you. And in particular, you have your first, I think, solo Kickstarter. Unless
Yeah.
I think it is your first, right?
Yeah, the first one by myself. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
And
I know I was on before with Chuck for Belial, but this is a whole new venture for me.
yeah, and it's I drive for Cerber, I think it is how it's pronounced.
Yeah.
It's not Uber, it's Cerber, being funded on Kickstarter. So before we dive into this, the whole story behind it, what is the basic premise for those who are hearing about it for the first time or seeing it for the first time and all that fun stuff?
Yeah, so the quick rundown is it's about Jim, and he was out of luck and he was looking for a new job because he used to be a construction worker, wasn't working out so hot. That's rad, by the way. I did not expect that. And he finds himself applying for a new job, and it turns out it's for this company named Cerber. He fills out the questionnaire, gets a ring back right away. They give him the job, and he goes out to pick up his very first passenger. Turns out Cerber is like Uber for the paranormal. So now, not only does he have to survive the night and get his passengers, which are the cryptids that you might know or anything like spooky out there, but he also has to survive that. And it turns out that his sister, who died, actually becomes one of his passengers. And now he has to also find out more about how she died exactly.
Yeah, and let's dive into this a little bit because for those who don't know, this wasn't an original idea. It's an adaptation from
Yeah.
creepypasta from Reddit. I'm probably gonna get the name wrong, and I'm sure you're gonna correct me, but MoFucious, I want to say, or
MoFucious. Yeah.
and again, names are not my thing. I think did the original story. And so, how did even all this come about? Because obviously, you adapted it into a comic, but
Yeah.
how did you get involved in the project? How did you find the story? How did obviously you meet this and all that fun stuff? Because it's really interesting when you start going into adaptations, and this hasn't been done before.
Well, I got super lucky. I was trying to look for something that would kind of bridge the gap between doing Belial as a partner project to doing my solo written comic book that I've got scheduled down the way. And so I felt a good way to take that baby step was to reach out and try to find something I could resonate with. And my oldest son was super into creepy pastas, short horror stories, and stuff like that. So that naturally, me wanting to connect with him, I got into those as well. And found this one. This one, just listening to it on the audio and reading it myself over and over and over again. The way it was laid out in the prose version fit. I felt perfectly for a comic book. It's the way I was seeing it when I was reading it. So I got really inspired and said, hey, look, I'm willing to go ahead and take a chance. People take a chance on me as an inker all the time, and they reach out just blindly. I'm going to do the research. And so I did the research to find out who MoFucious was, because that's obviously a pen name. And after talking with them, they got super excited. I showed them some artwork that Kyron did, Kyron Silva, the penciler for the comic, and they were on board 100%. They gave us full right to make the comic book and to be able to turn it into something with Kickstarter and anything that goes with it to help support it, as long as I gave them the proper respect and attribution to their creation, and to not add anything or change anything that existed. I could take stuff out, but I couldn't add anything to it. So as long as I was respectful about the approach, they have been outstandingly supportive.
Yeah, so let's talk about this, because obviously, I mean, when you're adapting something, obviously choices have to be made on certain things. And I'm sure there's things in there such as, what street, Jim is driving down, things like that, and even what color taxi or Uber he's driving. That's
Yeah.
probably not in, the pros. It might be. I don't know. I didn't read the pros. So but also the idea is that sometimes you also have to take things out. So what is that like? Because it is tricky and it is an art to understand. And I go back to Jaws as a really good example. The novel Jaws and the movie Jaws are very different, but they did a great job with the movie, because there's a lot of stuff in the novel that doesn't need to be in the movie. And so what was this like figuring that out? Because I would imagine there's some stuff in the prose of this that it's not really necessary and it would only drag it down. And also, you only have so much room in a comic book before the price starts going crazy high.
Well, okay, so first of all, the story takes place well over what I'm doing with this story arc here, which is only like 2 comic books long. So I had to isolate this story that happens. And so the one that I'm telling is like 10 parts long. So the first issue is only the first 4 parts. The second issue is going to be the last 6. And one of the harder things to do was to kind of parse out where a good cutoff spot was. So that was the first step. After that, it was to discern which information would make a good visual in a comic book that didn't necessarily have to be told in words. And some of it I got lucky because the location is that it takes place in is here in California, and it's within driving distance for me. So I was able to kind of tap into my mental database of a lot of the information and say, okay, we can work with this. And I think this would be a good frame, so to speak. So if I was presenting this story as if it were a movie, which frames would make the best storyboards? And so I tried to find the right beats to that, and then broke it down even further to try to find the good page turns. So it was just a basic like deconstruction, and then trying to fill in the gaps if I cut too much, just to make it work well. And for a comic book that primarily takes place in a car, some of it was challenging to make it as intriguing or exciting as anything else. But I'm sure if you've seen movies like Telephone or Payphone or whatever it was, where the whole movie took place at this payphone, it can be done. You just have to look at the right recipe and hit the right beats. And that was fun for me to kind of work with.
Yeah. And let's even dive into this too, because obviously it is a very short story as it sits right now, where it's a part 1 and a part 2, obviously 1 through 4, and then 5 or 6 through 10. I forget if you're going 5 on issue 1 or if it's 5 through 10 on issue 2, but it's 2 issues for the most part. And what is that like? Because one of my biggest pet peeves is when something gets overdone in comics and in film, in movies. And sometimes it's nice when something only has 2 issues and it's kind of one and done, where you're not milking the thing. And that's not to say you can't go and tell another segment of the story later on,
Right.
if this thing does well, but this also is going to be standalone technically.
Yeah, no, it worked out really well, because even if you were to only pick up issue 1, you're going to have the entirety of one situation kind of resolve itself. That was one of the things I really liked about the creepypasta layout and the way that it was originally written, is because when they did it in episodes, there was cutoffs on events, and that the way they wrote it, there was almost like mini cliffhangers. And it just made great for being able to translate into like a comic book, because it helped with the page turns and stuff like that. But yeah, so it was a lot of fun to do, and it works out really, really well. To where I don't feel like I'm leaving people hanging at an unnecessary place, but I give them just enough to want to go to the next one. And I think as an indie creator, a lot of people are like, I'm going to have like 180 episodes. Well, I am a full-time father, full-time employee, and part-time comic creator. And so for me, I think in order to keep my production and keep me fresh, switching titles is helpful to me. It gets me to test the waters and see where I most naturally fit. It allows me to take risks and see what happens, that kind of stuff.
Let's actually talk about that too, because one of the things, and I'm very honest about this, there's a reason why I don't just interview comic people. I interview wrestlers, cosplayers, models. I've had everybody on, obviously voice actors. It keeps me fresh. And there's a reason why I'm really trying this season to actually get more diversified, because when I'm interviewing a voice actor and then I'm interviewing a comic person, I approach it differently, and it keeps me more conversationalist, if anything. It also expands what I can do. I grow as a person. And I think this is a really big problem right now in comics, is that people aren't growing in their creativity. I mean, people challenge me, and I know you're an artist and you're an inker, but I feel like, people haven't really been challenged with art lately. And then I think they need sort of an ass kicking, for lack of a better word, not because I want you to get your ass kicked, but I want somebody to be like, man, that guy smoked me and I need to get better if I want to continue to work in this field, or I need a challenge. And I feel like, because I look at a bunch of covers in particular and everybody's the same, and I don't see the next evolution. And every once in a while we get it, but that's what I feel. And I think it's very interesting that you bring this up, because it's good to be challenged and say, cool, I got 2 issues here, I got 2 issues there, and staying fresh, I think, is very, very, very important.
One of the things I wanted to be able to do is, well, as you know, like you were saying, I'm started out more or less as an inker. And one of the reasons why people are like, why do you like inking? And I said, because I like working with people. I like the variation in style. I like seeing how different people do things. And with me being, like I said, full-time father, full-time employee, I don't have the resources or the money to go back to school or art school to be learning this stuff. So the best way to challenge myself is to bring people on that I feel are better than me at something. They challenge me in those incremental pieces that allow me to level up where I can. And so, like with Belial, Chuck challenged me with the writing stuff. And so then eventually, as you've seen me grow in that process, bringing him on as writer and co-creator, I've been able to grow a little bit and become part of the creative editor and do different things in that realm. And that gave me enough to where I could challenge myself to do this adaptation. The adaptation challenged me enough to grow and become the actual full-on solo writer. So I'm just trying to put myself out there so I can grow, and I want to work with people who have different approaches and that I respect and I view as better than myself, because they're just going to level up something. If they can get interested in what I'm doing, then let's do the thing. But I think a lot of people sacrifice a lot of that in the name of the almighty dollar, or just opportunity gets robbed.
I think it's tricky. I really do, because it's a business, and I've had plenty of conversations with people where it's business versus passion project versus long-term goals versus, what do I need to do? And then all of a sudden you go and you form a company and you're pushing out 12 titles, and now you really have to think on a whole different level. And it gets tricky. It gets very tricky, because there's plenty of bad content, but it also makes a lot of money. And I think it's a very complicated thing. I also think that, obviously I have a day job and I buy and sell comics. I do this, on the side. And I think that's fascinating too. So obviously I can't go out there and, people give me shit for it sometimes, but I'm like, you got to realize that I run a whole separate business and then I have a day job on top of it. Like, if there gets a point where I'm out of resources, and I think that's something that is lost in making comics, because I think most people in indie comics don't do this full time.
Yeah, there's a lot of people who do what they can, and it's difficult, and especially with the majority of comic books independently not being a primary source of income. A lot of the people I think that benefit the most are your artists. And those, it's hard because a lot of people are doing similar styles, like you were saying. So when you put out a call to action for saying like you're hiring somebody, you get a lot of the same type of thing. And so unless you really know what you're looking for and challenge people, say, here are the samples, can you do this? Then you're going to get a lot of the cookie cutter type of style. And so I know, like for Belial, Gregory Warrenchak's art style really worked out for us, and his creativity that way, and the way it was presented with the gray wash and stuff, it fit the story. For I Drive for Cerber, after talking with MoFucious, they felt a semi animated feel would work best, and I totally agreed with it. So we went totally in on that idea, which is why Chiron fits so well. So just knowing where the puzzle pieces fit and where you can kind of go with that is a big deal.
And then also just to throw even more things into the wind. Obviously we look at a bunch of people's Kickstarters, and when you're doing 30, 40, 50,000 and your bad girl art is selling 10,000, dollars, I mean, you get caught in what is known as a cover trap. And
Yeah.
it's not anymore an issue where you have to do what's right for the business. Because once you cross a 10,000 position or a 20,000 and you're doing it 3 or 4 times in a row, you are now a small business and you have to think what's best for the business. And that also stops creativity, but
Yeah.
it keeps you alive. It's a whole complicated thing. And believe me, I know this space so well because I'm in the Zenoscope bad girl art on my eBay store. And I'm going through diversification right now, and it's quite painful, to be honest.
Yeah.
Not as painful as my leg with my surgery. I want to make that crystal clear. Not as painful as that. But those muscle spasms hurt, guys. But all jokes aside, it's so interesting. But I do want to dive further into this,
Yeah.
and actually really get into it. So it's really interesting as well because this is a recognizable piece. What you have created with I Drive for Cyber, or I think I said it right. Or is it
Cerber?
Cerber. It's been a long day. It's been a long 48 hours for me.
I'll let it slide. Come on now.
So it's been one of those days, guys. But what is this like? Because a lot of people have read this, and a lot of people have read it in prose, but they haven't seen it visually. And so, what is that like, knowing that you're working with a very recognizable piece? And because I would imagine it's stressful, but not stressful.
Yeah, it's exciting and challenging at the same time because even before me, like I was saying, it existed with Reddit. From Reddit, it also exists on different like YouTube channels. So like Nature's Temper, the guy who does our audio for the comic book, he actually did that exact story on YouTube, and he has thousands of followers. And there's actually a spin-off series is written by a guy named Josh Wagner who does Cerber Eats, and then or I Ride for Cerber, and then there's Werewolves Are Assholes, which take place in what is known as the worst verse, which is where Cerber exists. So I have to be true to the people that are already following it and find the right things that excited them along the way. So part of the research and trying to find out whether or not I really wanted to dig in on this story was looking at feedback and finding that there was fan art already, fan fiction, and reading some of those and looking at those things. It just knows which parts are going to resonate with people, and are there multiple parts that resonate, and seeing all of those different pieces exist independently of themselves. It was exciting. And but the intimidating aspect is, are they going to be just as excited to have the same story told in a new medium? And that to me was a big deal. And so one of the things I think that helped with that is that having it officially endorsed by the creator and them giving me the actual permission and being able to say this is in line with their vision, it really helps, because some people are shocked at how some of the characters look versus what they envisioned. So
Yeah, let's actually talk about that too, because obviously this is very much a culture within a subculture, or it's a subculture within a culture. And obviously people have taken it, they've added stuff to it, they've evolved out of it, they've utilized it, they've referenced it. And when you start creating fan fiction of something, obviously that might not be canon. I think that's the whole point. But even still, it's culture relevant, to anything. If you write fan fiction about Star Wars, it's culture relevant despite it not being canon. And this is, I don't think, any different. And so, what is that like? Because now you're coming into this, you're going to be kickstarting it, and you have to be very much aware that that stuff exists,
yeah,
and that whether you utilize it or you don't, or you take a piece of it, or you say, hey, let me just throw a little Easter egg into it, because even though you can't add something, I mean, you could sneak something into the background that may or may not be, massively relevant to the story, but somebody's like, oh, I know that little like character thing, or there might be something. So what is that like? Because it's very interesting and hitting those notes, because this is what is really the secret sauce of this entire comic in a lot of ways, is understanding the notes that really hit that subculture, because this is creepypasta inside of a particular story.
Yeah. I think one of the things that really was important was identifying which articles of fan fiction were actually approved by MoFucious, which is because the creepypasta community is really supportive of itself and the others that are involved in it. And so they reach out, because creepypastas are generally made for the enjoyment of the reader. There's no monetary benefit to it or anything else that goes. They are writing it to be read. So it's a passion. And so looking back and finding the people that did the official kind of renditions of their own fan fictions, and then reading the unofficial ones just to see, okay, where did they come up with this? What was it about the original story that made them want to write this? It kind of gave me an insight to, I guess, like a test group almost, because you get to see that feedback on which parts of the story resonate well enough to inspire other people to also create. So being able to kind of cherry pick my way through that and insert some of those elements and make sure that they exist within the book, I feel kind of gave me a leg up in the presentation.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. And obviously, when you're dealing with a very fan centric product, it's a little bit different than when you're creating something that is out of nowhere and that there isn't a fan base for it.
Yeah.
And then even going further into this, I mean, there's some other cool stuff that is done with this as well. And obviously, I mean, you mentioned the name already, but there's a whole scenic route where I think there's a comic, whether, I don't know if it's printed or if it's a PDF, but it has no word bubbles in it, and it's the reading of it. And it's almost a audio meets a comic book, and you could sort of mesh them together. I don't know how to describe it, but it's combining of the two mediums. And what is that like? Because you can't do that with any comic book, but with this book it works in particularly well, because it's based off of an actual reading, and it's based off of a story that has the audio already done, and maybe the audio needed to be re-recorded and maybe needed to be set in a little faster tempo for the comic pages. But beyond that, what was that like? Because it's an interesting experience, to say the least.
Well, for me, like I said, since the beginning, I've always wanted to try to help other people grow and kind of support what they do, and kind of like, just like I said, mostly network and support. And one of the ways I could really pay respect to the people that existed within Cerber before me was to try to find a way that could integrate all of that into one product. And so I was like, well, as a kid, I really enjoyed, books with the little page turns and stuff like that. And as I got older, audio books were relevant. So I thought, well, why don't we take the original story written by MoFucious to give them proper credit there, and also follow that with the audio that's done by Nature's Temper, who existed before I did with Cerber. And he gave me permission to use his audio and bring those together and kind of fuse it with the third presentation being the actual comic book pages. And so going through the audio and adding like a page turn sound to go along with the visual stuff is just my way of showing respect to what existed before me, but also, you know, bring them along in a new manner. And hopefully, and it's been popular as an add-on and everything else, and it is digital, so I don't have to print a separate type of book. But for people that want to be more accessible, because creepypastas are really big worldwide, for a way that's going to work out, that's going to be really cool.
Yeah, and let's even talk about this going further. I mean, I'm a strong believer with Kickstarter that Kickstarter at this point is a privilege. It is not a right.
Yeah.
I view going to your local LCS more as a right than a privilege. Meaning, if you want to pick up comics, a local comic shop, whether that's online or in store, is more of a right than a privilege. And people who come to Kickstarter, this is a privilege. It's not a right. And so you need to stand out, because the first thing that I think always goes in hard times is the privileges, not the rights.
Yeah.
And this is one of those things that attracts people to some degree. It makes you stand out, I feel. And on Kickstarter at this point, you need to stand out versus needing to, and you need to have something that's different, because when there's 200 projects up on Kickstarter and they all have similar art, they all have similar covers, they all have a similar premise, they're all good stories, what's going to make me back your book versus somebody else's? And I think this is one of those things where it's like, cool, we're trying something else and we're trying a new concept and we're adding something, we're throwing an idea out there, and at least this piques interest. And so what is that like? And I don't know if that was the intention or part of the intention, or you just wanted to pay tribute, but I think it accomplishes that nonetheless, where this at least piques somebody's interest, saying, cool, there's something where we're taking out all the words and now you can hear, you know, somebody reading it that goes along page for page with the book.
Yeah. I think for me, I wanted a way that could tap into a lot of different types of people. So for me, being able to do this version was kind of my way of trying to reach out to the people that enjoy just reading books in a regular manner, or that like to present maybe stories to their kids or something through an audio type of version. And it was a way to broaden the audience and bring them into maybe a medium that maybe they weren't used to before. One of the things I think getting caught up as an indie creator is oftentimes we cater to our own circle and we don't reach out far enough to try to bring outside people in. And so for me, one of the coolest things that I do is like for conventions, like I'll go to a horror convention, not a comic book convention, every time, because I want to bring new people in, and they're you looking for those avenues to inspire and bring people to a new source of entertainment, I think is an honor and a privilege.
Yeah, so let's actually dive into that, because one of the things that I've noticed, and there's a reason why I set up my podcast a certain way, because I'm trying to convert the person who's a cosplayer into a comics, into wrestling, into that. There's a reason why it's really smart. I set it up like 9 years ago for that reason. It's a pop culture show. It's not a comic show.
Right.
Because the idea is that, let's say I do 50 voice actors and that's their audience, and I get 10% of them now to watch somebody who's a comic artist. That benefits both parties.
Yeah.
And I think this is one of the things that really is getting interesting with comics, is that more people, and we were speaking about Matt Knowles, and I know you and Matt sometimes hang out, you know, both publicly and privately in some Facebook chats. I know all the secrets of breaking every rule. It's not kayfabe anymore. I may or may not have gathered that information just recently. But one of the things is that obviously he does stuff that's not necessarily comics. And I think it's very important. And I think a lot of creators don't necessarily know where to go to say, cool, this audience isn't directly comics, but they like X, maybe they'll like my comic.
Yeah.
And you need to grow your audience. And so what is this like? Because it is important sometimes to get outside, and you might not make as much money, but maybe if you get 50 people on your email list, that's worth money too. Or if you sell only 25 books, but you found 25 new customers, you need to continuously grow the audience.
I think I go towards kind of like what excites me when it comes to like music. I like all different genres of music. So knowing that different types of things can go to different audiences is really big. So like um I'm a really big fan of Eric Cockrell's Blister. One of the things I loved about that comic book, or John Westhoff's Drumsticks of Doom, is that it brings the love for music and crosses it over into the comic book realm. So same thing with Matt Knowles, he has musical elements that tie into the comic book. And so I love bringing those multiple formats into that awareness. And I think it allows us not to be repetitive within our same circles. Um, and challenges you to think differently, because it's one of the hats that I didn't know I was going to be wearing so often is the marketing hat. And knowing, hey, who is this going to speak to, and being able to be like, oh, okay, ahead of time, we're going to talk to these people and these people over here, just to be able to create that excitement, because you never know who they're going to reach out to.
It's very interesting that you bring that up, because obviously, when I go and interview a voice actor, I have a pretty good idea what audience it's going to hit.
Yeah.
I have a pretty good idea of the demographic. Obviously just had Brian Donovan, who plays Rock Lee from Naruto, on.
Yeah.
I have a pretty good idea of the age demographic and the medium income of who that interview is going to hit, and who's going to see it. And so when I go out for sponsorships, I have a pretty good idea of how to market that, or where to even put it, or what groups to put in, or how to hashtag it when we shoot it out again. It's not that hard to figure that out, but it's important to understand and know that. And I wear a marketing hat a lot more than I wear an interview hat. It's unfortunate. It's not fun. Actually, it's a lot of fun, but that's not the point. I wear it just as much, and I think that's a big problem in comics, is that I think most people in indie comics, and maybe I'm jaded, are not very good at business. They're not very good at marketing, and not necessarily Facebook ads or Twitter ads or anything like that, but saying, what is the demographic of my book, and what hashtag, if you can only pick 3 hashtags, would I use? And it sounds like a common exercise, but it's not utilized heavily.
Yeah, no, it's really something, because I think one of the things is that inspires my marketing efforts is probably geared from self-doubt. I don't start out going, everybody's going to love this story. I'd be like, okay, well, if I was to push this, who's going to be most inclined? And then I kind of work myself backwards from there and try to get those people interested. And then I branch out. So like with the marketing efforts with Cerber, I started out with basic, like Uber looking ads, just as a visual jump off. And once people responded with those, then I did some commercials to kind of drag in a different audience. And then I introduced the audio snippet to grab the next audience. And it was just taking my shots in targeted directions, because I was like, okay, this is what exists. Let's feed those primary things first. And then hopefully that gains enough traction that they talk to their friends and gain that excitement and interest.
It's interesting, because that's what I'm doing with my shorts and my TikToks now, with all this content and YouTube shorts and that stuff. I'm like, cool, what piece of information does somebody want in 45 seconds that's gonna make them stop and say, cool? And I'll give a good example. How'd you get the voice of Amy Rose from Sonic the Hedgehog with Lisa Ortiz, or how she didn't evolve her Oshawott? That's what people want to know, and it sounds funny, but it's 38 seconds.
Yeah.
and it's a question. And what I've learned is that people like questions. My most famous YouTube video has almost 40,000 plays. What is an anime OVA? It answers a question. It's shot horribly. It's all grainy, but guess what? People love it in the comments and are so positive. It's so positive. Nobody ever says anything bad about that video because it answers a question.
Yeah.
And so that's what I've learned is that, and that's really where my marketing is coming from right now, is it's definitely more audio and visual versus just even building out artistic. But I think it's very, very interesting. And I said, cool, what do people want to know in a short amount of time? And what's going to catch them? And everyone wants to know, how'd you get this character? How'd you do this? What does this look like? Or familiarity. And I think it's so interesting.
Dude, I've had to scrap so many ideas just because I'll run it by my kids. Because like my oldest one is 17, my next one is 13, and then I have a 7-year-old. So seeing where they resonate with them, I've scrapped so many ideas just because it didn't maintain their attention span. I'm like, look, I wanted to get that because I noticed that if I go in to say hi to my daughter and she's watching something, oftentimes I'll get sidetracked by what she's watching. And I think it's the way it's constructed, like in those 1.5 second, frame changes and different stuff like that. And then that translates over to us as adults and stuff going to TikTok, like you were saying. It's what is going to be the most engaging? How much can you pack into a 30 second to a minute time span? Because that's where people engage the most,
Yeah. And even going further, I mean, obviously, I have slow burners too. And I love having slow burner content because sometimes I don't need something to hit a home run. But also I've had weird content on Instagram go crazy. Then I'm like, I put up something on Instagram of Mandy, the comic Mandy by Dean Yeagle. And I did not expect the result on that one. And I didn't realize how many people know who Mandy is. And I'm like, wait a second, this is crazy. And a really cool thing. It's a cool book. I think there's only like 27 of them in the world. It was a weird Kickstarter that nobody knew about, and it's a great book. But apparently, a lot of people were receptive to it because it's a really cool concept. It's a great book, and it's weird, but I have slow burning content, but I think it's so interesting and just how to market this. And obviously, you have a bunch of different stuff going, and obviously, I mean, you're more than funded on it too, which is crazy too.
Yeah, it's kind of a cool thing because I was able, not being partnered up, like say with Chuck on this one, I would feel more responsible. I feel horrible if I took a chance, let's say with Belial, and it didn't do well. Taking the chance and having a lower funding goal and everything for this, I was like putting myself at risk. And so it was an interesting experiment, I guess you could say, in where or how would I develop even during the campaign. So there's been a lot of different kind of obstacles to try to overcome that I just didn't
not to
have.
cut you off, but I'm actually really curious about this. So obviously I run my business by myself. I don't have a business partner. So when I take a risk, I mean, it's on me. I don't take money from my parents. Nobody has invested in me, and I want it that way.
Yeah.
I don't like to lose money. I don't feel comfortable losing money. I, at the moment, don't want to work with my friends on investments or anything like that. We talk about it, but I don't want to manage their money, and because I don't want that responsibility. But if I was to partner with somebody on a Kickstarter and I'm developing a partnership business with somebody and I'm going to be working on it, I was supposed to work on it, but my foot's not working great right now. Guys, I had a surgery. It's all right. I'm going to go to sleep after this, I promise. But all jokes aside, I have so many jokes. Oh man, I got an Ash Wednesday joke just ready to go off. I gave up walking for Lent, guys. So I don't know about anybody else. That's a good joke. That's a good joke. But anyway, the point I'm getting at here is what is this like? Because do you feel more responsibility, or do you feel that, hey, as an individual, I don't owe my business partner or my creative partner, 100% of or more than I owe myself? Or like I'm probably not phrasing it correctly, but I guess the way I feel, and maybe this will clarify it, is that if I take a risk, I feel way more comfortable putting myself in a higher risk position
Yeah.
than if I have people who are 50% partners on it, unless we agree to do the higher risk and it's a collective agreement. So I'll give you
Yeah.
an example. Like if you went out and hired Steph Wilson and Steph Wilson was brand new and you and Chuck agreed on Steph, that I don't think is putting, a 90% risk evaluation on it. But is that because it's tricky, right? Because I know some people say I have a partner to mitigate risk, but it sounds like you feel that when you have a partner, just the opposite.
I feel
I'm probably not explaining that very well.
no, for me, I feel like I owe Chuck success with Belial. When I started out, because when I created Belial originally, it was one idea, and then he came in with his flavor to it, and then all of a sudden, he's being more than just a writer. He's now being a co-creator. So when I offered that up to him and he took it and he's like, "Are you sure?" I said, "Absolutely, let's do this." But at that moment, it was me acknowledging now I'm asking for him to put his time, his effort, his money, and everything that goes into it, also equally as much as I do. And so just as I would try to strive for my own success, but now I owe that same effort for them as well. And if I fail, it's not just on me. I can handle failure on my own. I've done it plenty of times. What's different with I Drive for Cerber is that the whole concept existed from taking chances. I took a chance and started listening to creepypastas and reading creepypastas. I took a chance when I reached out to MoFucious. They took a chance on me and allowing me to translate it into a comic book format. And it's my first time working with Kyron as well as other people that are involved. So the whole thing is about taking chances. So I think it made me less nervous on that aspect for I Drive for Cerber than say like with Belial, where I feel like I owe the success to Chuck because he has pushed so hard for its success that I would feel worse if it tanked on a Kickstarter or something.
That's interesting. That is. I mean, I haven't worked on a project with a partner, and and if I do, if it's 50-50, I mean, it's going to be, I don't know how I'm going to feel because I haven't done it yet. So I can't say, but, I mean, I'm hoping that me and the person are going to be on the same wavelength. And
Yeah.
I would hope that they would say, I want to give you everything that I can give you, and you can hopefully give me everything that you can give me, and we could all work it out that way.
Yeah.
In the partnership business that I'm slowly building, it is a 50-50 royalty deal. So we're just splitting the revenue from
I
a
got you.
particular platform. So I don't feel like I owe the person or persons involved
Yeah.
anything because we're just sharing the revenue. But I owe them, if we bring in $100 on said product, every day, they, after the fees and everything, they get 50%. I get 50%.
Yeah.
But it's ideally good for both parties. But it's, everybody's bringing something to it. But it's a little bit different, I feel, because it's not a comic that we're working on.
Yeah. So like for me, like with it being a comic book, I think a lot of people don't recognize that, a lot of people can only work on one or two, maybe three projects at a time. And so when like say working with Belial with Chuck, I'm basically asking him to stop working on these other projects, stop bringing in the income that he gets from working on these other projects, and to work on a book like Belial, and that requires a lot more attention and effort than say something different. Um, Plus, the credibility is weighed a lot differently. I feel there's a validity to one's position when you're creating versus just working on a piece of somebody else's property. Um, so knowing that you want that success for them, and like I said, I ask for attention and time and effort, communication, all those things. The least I can do is say, you deserve success. And he does. He deserves all the success that goes along with everything that he does. But the part that I can give back is trying to put myself out there for as much success for the entirety of the property. So it's the same thing that I kind of am doing for I Drive for Cerber, is that I want to reignite the awareness of this story that's existed for, a couple years now, and light a fire creatively for MoFucious, who coincidentally, after working on these comics, has been inspired to continue writing more Cerber stories, which is cool.
That's interesting, and obviously that's good. It's fun to light fires under people's asses. Believe me, I've done it on certain levels, and I know whose fires whose asses I've burned. But I digress. I digress right there. I also know which bridges I burned on other people's shows, but that's not the point here. There's plenty of shows I'm not welcome on for a lot of good reasons, and I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. I'm fine with the L. But I do want to talk about the reward side of this. So there's obviously the digital. There's the digital of the audio with the audio. And there's the physical of the Chiron cover, I think is how the name is pronounced, which I don't actually know which is which. So I have images, but I don't know if this is the Chiron or if this is the Chiron.
So that one right there, that's one done by Mark Zuptich. He's my friend from high school that he brought me on a long time ago to do the first book that I worked on that was called Into the Darkness. And so it was kind of cool. He actually was excited by the story when he heard it and wanted to be, he's like, can I do a cover for you? I said, absolutely. The other one that you saw there, that was the one done by Chiron. So this one, I think it's always important to have a cover that reflects the interior art. So it's always important. So Chiron, the one that did the interiors, is the one that did this cover as well. And they're both fun. They both speak to different elements of the story, I feel. So this one gives you more of the horror aspect, the creepypasta aspect, and the other one's kind of a more playful one.
Yeah, and then obviously, I mean, you have the exclusive Kickstarter foil cover. I know you have, the Cerber representative package.
Yep.
I know that you have a retail package. I think you got a metal flow cover as well.
It's metal and it's glow in the dark, which is kind of a cool little addition to that.
So you got that out there. I know you got the original art, some original art that's up there. I think it's still up there, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Again, I don't know these things, how they sell out and how fast they sell out. Sometimes, original art just sells out just like that. I've been on campaigns where original art, first thing up, first thing that it goes. And then obviously you have some stickers. I showed obviously Jim. Then you have Borg.
Yeah.
And then you have
Siobhan.
Yes, I wasn't gonna try. I gave up a while ago. I make a fool of myself plenty without weird names, and I just was not gonna attempt, guys. I just wasn't. No offense. I know when to quit is the point.
Well, the cool thing about doing this and that it having like an existing property, so to speak, I didn't have to worry about the pitfalls of trying to avoid spoilers. I've been telling people the entire time, if you want to read the entirety of the story, go to Reddit, look up MoFucious and I Drive for Cerber. You'll find not only the story I'm working on, but all of the other extended stuff too. If you want to listen to I Drive for Cerber, you can go to Nature's Temper on YouTube and listen to them. And then I know that you're going to love the story enough that you're still going to be a fan and you're going to want the comic book version. There are no spoilers from me. You're going to get all of the information. So if you ask a question, I'm going to tell you this is what happens, but it's exciting and you're still going to want to know when you're going through it.
Yeah. Well, what is that like? 'Cause that's kind of interesting, right? I mean, I'm trying to think of something that, we all know how it ends, right? But we're still going to watch it, right? So I can't think of something off the top of my head like that. But I'm sure it exists. But what is that like? Because it's a weird thing when we know how this is going to end, but we want to see it in a different format.
Yeah. Like I said, it can be intimidating if you let it. I kind of choose to let it be exciting because if it inspired me to be confident in it enough to turn it into a comic book, I know it's going to be good enough that other people are going to want to see it as a comic book. I interpreted the story the same way, and you're going to get all of those key elements from the story in this presentation. I think it's just exciting to see how many forms something can take and still be true to its original format. So that for me is super huge.
No, I just think it's interesting because I can't think of an idea like that has been done off the top of my head, but I know it exists, so that's cool. And then obviously the other final reward is meet MoFucious or name slipping in my head, Q&A with the writer.
Yeah, and one of that's cool because nobody knows what or who or anything about MoFucious. Like I said, it's a pen name, and I had to do quite a bit of research to kind of locate them and track them down. And I've actually talked to them, and I'm friends with them on Facebook and everything. And this is really kind of for those people that are in that worst verse and that have done those like the fan fiction and the fan art. Do they want to know a peek behind the curtain that nobody else will know? So that's one of the things that I used kind of as a leveraging point for the existing people, as a point of interest, to have something that it in this realm that already exists that nobody else, that they can kind of use as a bragging point, or that they can use to kind of tap in and kind of pick their brain to, for people that want to be inspired or aspire to be writers themselves or creators themselves.
No, I think it's interesting. I like Q&As with creators. I think they're always fun. I think obviously I'm in a privileged class because I do this way too much during the week. So I get some very interesting tips both publicly and privately. Which probably is not a good thing to say because I haven't written a comic yet. So it really means I'm lazy. I'm not lazy, guys. I'm just busy. But I like the fact that it's there, and I like the fact that it's a big tier item. And I think every campaign needs one of those. I do.
One of the additional things is that as far as MoFucious goes, I had stated that when we reached the $5,000 stretch goal reward, MoFucious would actually do a commentary on the story. And now I've challenged them. They can do it as themselves, or they can use a voice changer to add that mystery, and that would keep the exclusivity of the high dollar tier as being able to touch them as a person versus an entity. But it exists because we just today passed that $5,000 stretch goal reward mark, which is super exciting.
Oh, that's good. That's good, and that's interesting. That raises another question that when a person becomes an entity and when they're a person, and but I don't want to go into the philosophy of that. That's meta into meta into meta. I really don't want to have that whole discussion because I want to leave it as a surprise.
Yeah.
One of the things though that I really like about your campaign is that it's simple as well. There's not that many rewards, and I mean, I'll be very honest. If I run a campaign and I might run something, I'm not going to say what it is just yet. It's comic related, but I'm going to keep it very simple. I might only do 4 or 5 rewards.
Yeah.
I think fulfillment is easier that way. I think it's also less choice. Sometimes is easier. Also saying cover A, B, C, and then there's a digital, and then maybe there's the whole package. And I think it's smart, and I think obviously you have more than I think 5 rewards, but you don't have a hell of a lot considering. And so that's something that I like about your campaign in a lot of ways as well. Is that it's very simple, it's very easy to follow, it flows nicely, and I think that's also a big problem in Kickstarter right now. Is so many people's Kickstarters do not flow nicely, and it's when you get to having 50 rewards, we got a problem.
Well, I haven't been able to. I don't have the luxury of being able to take the like backer kit type of route or anything else like that, where you have an outside source package and ship your books. But doing it this way has allowed me a lot of unique opportunities. One, I know that I'm packaging them myself. 2, as it works out, that me, Kyron the penciler, MoFucious, and Kenny Aiken, the colorist for the book, we all live within driving distance of each other. And so one of the things that I'm trying to hook up is the opportunity for all of us to get a comic book signing party to where we all meet up at the central location. We all sit there and we're able to sign these books for people. And one of the things that is good about keeping those reward levels low is that I package them myself, and allows for those cool and unique opportunities that come with people investing a higher price point on an indie comic than they would, say, a store-bought comic. What are they going to get that's worth more than what you'll get in a regular store? And this is a way to offer that.
No, it's very interesting. It's very, very, very important to get creative on how you add value. And I was just speaking with John about this before you, and I'm a big believer that value backers are actually disappearing from Kickstarter. I hate to say this, but I think things have to go cheaper. I think there's more competition. I think that the average backer is changing. It's good and bad. I mean, obviously, it's not. It means there's going to be less money in indie comics.
Yeah.
But I think that, it's going to be very interesting how people adapt. And, I think there is a bunch of dinosaurs that are going to die who do really well on Kickstarter because they have deep value backers. And I think that's going to change in the next 2-3 years. And I think that there's going to be a massive idea how to get volume or, signed books. And I think that's what's going to replace this. But again, that's a whole, 2-hour discussion with a lot of people. And
Sure.
that is also very opinionated. That's just what I think and what I see as looking in, and somebody who's been around the industry a while. This is what I see on Kickstarter as both a consumer and just everybody I speak to. I think that's what's coming, but I could be wrong. But again, that's more of an opinion / feel that I have. But I'm not an expert on that topic, but I digress. But yeah, I think that covers all your rewards, right?
Yeah, pretty much that's everything from what I can see. Other than just the introduction of like the air freshener is there. So like with the Cerber driver kit, the way that the entirety of the original story was presented was as if it was like a real business, which is why with the ads and the commercials and stuff that I made for the campaign, it was to present it as if it was real. And now backers that have been following along or know the original story, they can become drivers themselves. So you'll get like a t-shirt, a Cerber hand sanitizer, I drive for Cerber, air freshener, and all of this stuff actually ties in with what you need to become a successful driver for Cerber within the story. And so you'll know that when you go through the book or even listen to the audio clip that kind of is right there on the Kickstarter page. So there's like a 5-minute actual audio clip of the story that people can listen to and be like, oh, okay, this is what it's about. This is cool. The pages that are on the Kickstarter themselves actually tell the story. But yeah, that's the bulk of the rewards. And it's just a way to bring people in and keep the rewards relevant to the actual story.
Yeah, that's important too. That's very important. I find weird rewards sometimes. Yeah, no, makes sense. But I do want to back out of this, and I want to dive into a little inside baseball because I'm curious. Your mind, you're still fresh.
Yeah,
you're optimistic, unlike me, who's jaded. And I was touching upon this a little bit, and I'm a little bit curious. Is Chuck really thinking that Canadian bacon is the real bacon? No, that's not that's the real question you all want to know. No. But all seriousness, though, I am curious how you view where Kickstarter is going, crowdfunding is going, and even the whole market, because we're in weird times right now. Where I was speaking to John about this, I think I was speaking to Tyler Carpenter about this last night, and one of the things is that in January, it took 3, almost 4 weeks to get up to 200 comic projects on. And I think a lot of people have waited to see where things were. I think we've had a slow start to the Kickstarter year. I also think that it's not going to be like a 300, every month. And even in the prime of Kickstarter, months, I think those numbers are going to be a bit lower. And I'm curious where you see it going. I don't know if it's the economy. I don't know if people are burned out. I don't know if backers are burned out. And also, I've just noticed that books that should have done a good amount of money did not do what they needed to do. And so I'm very perplexed. And look, I'm exhausted till April on Kickstarter for a bunch of reasons. Obviously, this is not a joke. I mean, I just had a pretty major surgery, so my focus is a little bit outside of taking a break from pop culture. But even still, I mean, the first, probably the last 4 months, I've been heavy Kickstarter, and I need to refill the coffers as well. So I don't really, but that's just my view on all of this. And I don't really know what you're feeling or doing because you're more involved in the inner workings of things, and you got a bunch of different projects happening.
Sure. Yeah. No. I think we have entered a realm with Kickstarter where there's other businesses that are trying to use a similar model. And so some of the creators are trying different avenues. So some of the dispersal of attention is happening. Some people are going to those different platforms.
So when you say, sorry to interrupt, you mean like places like Indiegogo, Zoop, Crowdfunder?
Yeah, absolutely.
Indie, things like that.
Yeah. Because people are trying to see what the next big thing is. They want to be that inside person to utilize this new exciting platform, because people are thinking that if it strikes a different chord, there's probably going to be a different monetary reward from that. For me, I think we are in kind of like a breathing situation where we just got done being cooped up from like COVID and everything like that, where all of our entertainment was centralized, and now people are going back out and doing things. So I think there's a little bit of an exhale, and there was a little bit of an oversaturation because all these other creators that were also pinned at home were busy creating books. And so you're seeing kind of the fruition of a lot of that, where so many people are launching their books at the same time. Maybe it's not that they're a worse book, but that there's so many good books at the same time. I know that's been difficult for myself, and that could possibly lead itself to saying why some of these good books aren't funding as much as they did in the past. And I know for me, it's because of the breathing pattern of this business going up and down the way it has. I don't necessarily think Kickstarter is going anywhere, but it has caused me to spend more time in pre-game, so to speak. So I, rather than like say for Belial, where what I did was I created like a bunch of memes and just introduced the idea warming up to it. This time, I actually spent a lot of time on other platforms and stuff like Reddit and TikTok and Instagram and Twitter and Facebook, just to generate that pre-awareness as this is coming. So be excited. So during like maybe somebody else's campaign, if I can hold their attention for mine on that launch, just trying to do the prep work to build that excitement instead of just being able to launch it like I was, like say last year with like a Belial 2 or something, where you could just drop it and run, because people were starving for that at-home entertainment. Now people are getting to do other things.
Yeah, I think things have changed. is the nicest way to put that in summary. Obviously, I'm changing my strategy on interview stuff, and even realizing what's going to garner attention and how it's going to garner attention, and what garners attention and what people are looking for. And I can tell you, YouTube Shorts and TikToks, they're very, very effective. With no followers, I'm doing like 400 to 500 plays easy with like 3 followers. And I don't even advertise my TikTok because I want it to be a new audience purposely.
Right.
Which sounds crazy. And so those 500 people don't even know I exist on TikTok. And that's the whole point. Like, nobody knows I exist on TikTok in YouTube or anything else, because why would I want that? Why would I want an already existing audience to then make it harder for me to figure out if I'm driving traffic?
Right.
Something else. So that's the point. I think it's actually super smart. I think if you start combining your audiences, sometimes it's good, but that's not the point.
For me, one of the things that I did differently this time on Kickstarter was I utilized the I guess that specialized link feature that they have. So finding out where on the dashboard that the clicks are coming from. So like say for some people's like podcast or for TikTok or Facebook, I'll utilize like a different link. So that way I can see where to spend the attention next time. It's just, looking at it like a business. Once the project is done and you're saying, okay, now we're at the selling point, you should be able to focus on where you're going to get your return and knowing that's where you need to plant yourself more securely next time as well.
No, it makes sense. It makes sense. I mean, I think it's a business, and obviously, I mean, I ran a Kickstarter, and I don't want to talk about it. It was brutal. It was brutal. I don't think my concept was bad, but I was ill prepared. The skill was there, but I was ill prepared. I learned a lot, but I also think that people were just not ready for it, and I got a lot of shit for it. But I'm happy I did it. I did fund, but I got a lot of shit for it, and some of it I felt was unnecessary, and I still think it's unnecessary. But it changed me, and it made me worse than not gonna pretend. It opened up an eye to me about this industry that I did not want to know, and I'm very, very, very honest about it. And if people ask me, it's not that hard to figure out, but it also taught me a bunch of valuable lessons that are probably going to change course for me. So, but I digress. I think it's really interesting. But we've been speaking for an hour, and I do want to know if Chuck still thinks that Canadian bacon is real bacon. But I don't know if you're qualified to answer that question. So
I don't know. I mean, I know that Chuck used to work like as a cook. And I think that as an ingredient, he realizes they're different, but he appreciates them as if they're the same.
That might just be the case. That just might be the case. But, it's kind of like how many licks does it take to get to the center of a Tootsie Pop? The world will never know. Yeah. And so on that note, I'm going to give you a chance to self-promote yourself. So where could people find you, bother you, back the Kickstarter, social media, Twitter, TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat?
All right.
I'm now making them random words.
No, on Facebook, you can find me, my name right there, Shaun Barbour. You can find me on TikTok as Instinct, INSTINKED, which stems from me being an inker. And you can find me on, I believe, Twitter and Instagram as Instinct Comics. If you're interested in anything that I've done before with regards to Belial, you can go to instinctcomics.com. There you'll find the web store with all the cool little goodies there. And if you're interested in iDrive for Cerber, of course, you can go to cerbercomic.com or just search simply Cerber, CERBER, on Kickstarter. And it's one of the only things that'll pop up.
Yeah, and I'm just going to keep saying it. You have to support indie. And what that actually means is when people have Kickstarters, you need to go back their Kickstarter. When people have projects on their web store, you need to go buy them. If people release a variant on their Shopify store, web store, wherever else they're selling, got to go buy it. Also got to follow them on social media, whether that is Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. Anything that they have, you should probably go follow it. Most social media is free, and it is a click, and you should be engaging with them. That's the other thing, too, that makes a big difference. And again, it's free. So that's something that you should be doing because it goes a long way. It goes a long way, and you never know who and what it's going to impact.
And engaging with people you'll find out if you're right for them. Like if they're interested in what they're doing, is sometimes if you can connect with the creator, you'll find out that what they're into is what you're into, and it'll excite you in a whole new way.
I agree. I mean, look, I engage with a lot of people on social media, and I get a lot of interviews because of it. I'm also relentless, and I'm also a decent human being, which helps. If you're likable and you're a decent human being, you can get a lot of things. And if that doesn't work, bribery is the second. Because believe me, if charm doesn't work, money will. But that's not the point. That's not the point. A donation. Let's put it as a donation will work. We don't want to have a negative position on that, but all jokes aside, as far as I'm concerned about me, I'm Pop Anime Comics on all social media, including Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. I do have a goal on YouTube. I am at 501 subscribers. I want to get to 510 by the end of March. So I have essentially 38 days to do it, I believe, 38 days. So I am 9 away. And that is the goal. I think it is very obtainable. And so if you're not subscribed on YouTube, I would greatly appreciate if you can, because we are 9 away. So that's something that's really big for me. Increment small goals. I think we can do it, guys. I think we can do it. And so that's something that I'm really aiming for. And then also, I just released my ad rates on a bunch of different topics, and that's actually in the description. So if you're interested in advertising on this show and that's what you're looking for, I know a lot of people have a lot of projects coming out. You are more than welcome to go look at that. And again, I may or may not be a good fit, but if you have questions, more than happy to answer any question. And perhaps we can work something out, everybody, if you're interested. If not, no worries. And you're looking to advertise, there's a lot of good people who do a lot of good work. And I'm sure you can find somebody that will help you and be perfect for you. I will not be offended by any of that. And so that's something that I keep in the back of my head and just throwing it out there and everything that I do. And I do have a t-shirt out there. So go buy my t-shirt, guys. It's making fun of Taco Bell, Gundam, and the most interesting man in the world on Redbubble. Awesome t-shirt, but that's neither here nor there. And all that stuff's in the link down below, up top, to this side, that side, whatever, how you're viewing it. And yeah, that's pretty much everything I got going on. I do have something that I don't think I can announce yet. That'll be coming out in June. And potentially tomorrow, I will be unboxing at least 12 of these. So packs. So this will be fun to talk about. There's some silver packs in here too, which are cool. So just keep that in mind. That'll be live on YouTube. So that's all I got. And I'm going to give you the final word.
No, I'm just saying, make sure we go out there, make sure we support everybody, man. Like, even if you're not financially able, shares count, support helps, everything matters. And that's it.
Well, I don't think I could have said that any better myself. And so that is a wrap, everybody.